Welcome back to the Church of Obelisk. Today we're going to talk about the offlane role, and we'll give you a tier list. We're going to look at all the typical offlane heroes and see where they fit in the current meta. We're going to look at heroes that are S tier, that those are the best heroes in the game right now. The A tier, those are heroes that are significantly above average and very worthwhile playing. And the B tier heroes that are sort of balanced. They are neither too good nor too strong. They're good in particular situations, but not too strong overall. The C tier are heroes that you should mostly avoid, but if you're really good at these particular heroes, if you really like playing them, you can still play them, it's still fine. And then the D tier is heroes that you should just avoid. Just wait for these heroes to get buffed before you play them in the offlane role. This tier list is heavily data driven. It's based on stats from DotA Pro Tracker, from the highest level pub games, based on DotA buff from different skill levels, and also based on the DotA Plus stats. And it's mostly focused around pub play. So it's not about competitive, it's about pub play. And we're primarily interested in higher level play, because the higher up in level you go, the more important balance becomes. At lower levels, everyone's making so many mistakes that balance really doesn't matter all that much. But if you get to the higher levels, Divine Plus, and especially the kind of 7k plus games that you're looking at DotA Pro Tracker, this is where balance really comes into play very strongly. But we're also going to take the lower level stats into account to some extent. So let's jump right into the S tier list. These are the strongest heroes in the current meta for the offlane. First one is Beastmaster. Beastmaster is a beast in the laning phase. He really excels in aggressive lanes. We have some sort of position 4 that is strong in the laning phase, so you can just put on a lot of pressure onto the enemy carry. He does lots of physical damage as well as some magic damage with the axes and the ultimate. He has a BKB piercing disable. He pushes well. He's great at team fighting. Gives you lots of vision. It's just like a complete offlane hero. Offers everything you'd expect from an offlane hero, and he's just super solid. He has good win rates, he has high pick rates. At the lower tiers, he's not doing quite as well because he's a hard hero to play. But this is a very, very powerful hero. Next up, we have OD. OD is, after his reworks, actually a really strong offlaner. So the idea behind offlane OD is that you offer lots of utility in fights with your Astral, with your ultimate, and because you have so much harass damage in lane with your orb, you're actually a really, really strong laner. The item build you go for as offlane OD is you almost always want to rush Meteor Hammer. You have that Astral Meteor Hammer combo that is so hard to play against. And this also allows OD actually to farm reasonably well, and also to push well, to push towers. So OD is just really powerful as an offlaner, not just as a mid laner, also as an offlaner, even as a support. But honestly, I think probably offlane is his strongest role right now. Next we have Enigma, who's a really solid laner. Of course, the idea is you can always deny your own range group with the demonic conversion. Ideally, you do this outside of enemy XP range. This way you can push back the lane and almost always have at least a decent laning phase. And usually you get an XP advantage over the enemy carry, and then you're very strong at pushing once you have a couple of lures into demonic conversion. Once you have your black hole, it's actually very hard for the enemies to stop your push. Enigma is very flexible in terms of its item builds. So the classical items you want to have in the mid game is a Blink Dagger and a BKB, but you don't necessarily want to rush for those. Problem is, if you go for Blink Dagger first, is that when your black hole is on cooldown, you're kind of useless. So oftentimes you see Enigmas going some other item before a Blink Dagger. So one typical item would be Necro. You typically only get Necro 1, but Necro 1 is actually really good for pushing. So if you have a lane where you can push towers with Necro and your Eidolons, this is a very powerful tool. Also helps you for farming. Speaking of farming, you can also go for a Midas. It's a very greedy option, obviously, but helps you get those mid-game items and late-game items much more easily, as well as accelerating your XP. You can also go for something like a Greaves, especially strong if you're in a game where your black hole is not that powerful. So if you have, let's say, several ways of interrupting a black hole, you have, let's say, 2 ways of interrupting black hole through BKB, then you don't really want to rush for dagger and the BKB. You just want to get aura items like this Greaves and just sort of push with the team. This is not the ideal case for an Enigma, but if you get counterpicked like that, you can still just buy aura items, buy things like Greaves, buy things like Pipe, and still contribute a decent amount to the game. But of course, the ideal case is that you build like one stepping stone item like a Necro or a Hand of Midas, and then you go into your dagger and into your BKB, and then later on you go into more advanced items. You might get something like a Shiva's Guard, for example. You might get a Shadow Blade for better initiation. You might even get something like an Octarine Core or a Hex. A lot of different options. Of course, Retro Orb also a strong late game option once you have enough mana for that double black hole. Then we go to the A tier. These heroes are still very powerful, but not quite as strong as the S tier heroes. First, you have Lycan, which is in general one of the best heroes of the current patch. I feel like he fits slightly less well into the offlane than into the mid lane or the safe lane. But he's still very powerful as an offlaner, so he's up here at the top of the A tier list. Next, we have Puck, who's also very solid as an offlaner. A hero that, of course, can be also played as a mid laner, so picking him provides you some flexibility. You can also even play him as a support. So if the enemy team picks Puck, you don't really know whether they're running him as a mid laner, or as an offlaner, or as a support. It's kind of ambiguous. And this hero just fights super well in the mid game, and he can also scale quite well depending on what kind of items you buy. As an offlaner, of course, you want to buy more the kind of fighting items, things like a Blink Dagger or a Veil, and have like very strong disable in the mid game as well as being very elusive. Next, we have a hero that's kind of the opposite of Puck, who is not very fast, not very elusive, but on the other hand, he's super tanky and super solid. That's Tidehunter. And he's also, unlike all the other heroes that I've mentioned before, he's actually very easy to play. So all these 5 heroes at the top here, they're all kind of hard to play. You also have to be kind of careful how you play them. But with Tidehunter, it's fairly straightforward. So this is a great hero if you want to start learning the offlane role. Super solid hero, strong hero. Has like a few heroes that kind of counter him, but it's not too bad. You're never too sad with the Tidehunter as an offlaner. He's a great team fighter. He's a great laner. He's just very solid. And similar to Enigma, you don't want to rush the Blink Dagger. You want to get some other items first, but then later on Blink Dagger is great. Then we have Darkseer, who's really made a comeback. He's not the best laner in the game, but his mid-game team fight power just makes up for it. And especially against a lineup where the enemy has strong illusions, having that ultimate that replicates, if you say replicate an enemy Terrorblade illusion, that just packs so much of a punch. Of course, if you have a couple of melee cores, those Iron Shells are very powerful, and then they can just do all sorts of strong wombo combos in team fights if you have other heroes with AoE spells, especially AoE ultimates. Next, we have Underlord, another very solid hero, similar to Tidehunter, fairly straightforward, easy to play, but is also strong team fighter, very solid laner, and just a hero that doesn't have any strong weaknesses. Like the only thing that really is sort of bothering you is that you don't really have a lot of catch or mobility, but oftentimes you can just mitigate that problem by buying an Atos, which just works really well together with Pit of Malice, gives you lots and lots of disable, and sort of plugs this sort of one hole in Underlord's toolkit. And then of course you want to go for all these aura items. You can go for something like a Greaves, you can get Pipe, you can get all these sorts of aura items to help your team fight, and just build yourself to be tanky and help out your team. And this way you can win as Underlord. Visage is kind of a spicy inclusion here. It's not a hero that a lot of people are playing, especially not in the off lane, but I think he's actually very solid. With the Soul Assumption, you're a very strong laner if you have some sort of kill lane. If you play Visage as a 3, you want to have a 4 that can initiate, and that has some sort of stun, and that can actually like tank some damage and dish out some damage. So that your W gets charged up, and you can get those kills in the lane. Similar to mid Visage, this item build is very, very flexible. You can go for all sorts of things. You can even go for like a more magic inspired build with a Veil. You can get an Atos. You can get an early Aghanims. You can buy aura items, you can buy things like something like Greaves, you can buy Solar Crest. There's lots and lots of options on Visage. Next we have Pango, pretty solid offlaner, decent laner, and of course very strong at team fighting, very disruptive in team fights. The one disadvantage is that you don't really have like a good single target disable, so the only real disable you have is your ultimate, and that can kind of be hard to land at times. But it just causes so much disruption in team fights. There's a good amount of damage by offlaner standards, so it's just really solid. And we have Chaos Knight, who's more commonly thought of as a carry hero, but also actually someone who can work quite well as an offlaner. He provides a pretty good stun, a good initiation tool, and his ultimate, it does a lot of damage even if you don't have a huge amount of items. So you want to buy these kind of mid-range items on an offlane CK. You can go for something like a drum, you can get an armlet, you can get a Heaven's Halberd, these kinds of items. And also a very powerful item on offlane CK is the Aghanims. So what the Aghanims does is it creates an illusion of all allied heroes, including CK himself. So if you have some sort of carry or mid laner who has strong illusions, this is excellent. Just provides a huge amount of value for those 4.2k gold. So yeah, he's just a very strong laner as well. Can have strong kill lanes. He has initiation, he has disable. This is a very solid offlane actually. Next we have Bounty Hunter, who's kind of a situational hero. He's quite strong in the current patch. All the vision he provides is excellent. He has a really strong Aghanim shard. And if you have like a good lane where you can get good Jinadas off, he's very annoying to play against. The way you're going to build Bounty Hunter as an offlaner is you want to go for, first of all, mobility items that allow you to stick onto an opponent. So you want to get phase boots, you want to get over corrosion, you probably also want to get a drum. And then more utility items are great. So Urn is a great item, helps with mana problems, and since you want to be an active fighting hero, you want to get lots of those charges on Urn. Later on you can upgrade that into a vessel if that's required in the game. You can also buy all sorts of other utility items. You don't want to go for like straight right click items. That's not really what you want to go for as an offlaner, but you can buy things like pipe, like Solar Crest. You can of course buy BKB, you can buy Crimson Guard, Lotus Orb, all these sorts of items that help you stay in the fight and sort of be a bit tanky and also help out your team. Those are great items to get on Bounty Hunter. I talked about Core AT already in my carry list. He's just, I think, a fairly strong core hero if you play him properly. The idea is to go for phase boots, you go for an Echo Saber, and you go for the Aghanims. And after that, the new patch, you can also go for the Aghanim Shard. Gives you a very, very strong teamfight presence. You just run in there with your artificial BKB and stable people to death. So he's a really powerful team fighter. He doesn't farm all that well, but that's okay in an offlaner. So he's just a really strong mid-game fighting hero. We get Razor, who's very powerful in particular matchups. It depends on what enemy carry you're facing. He can be an incredibly strong lane dominator, or he can be kind of meh. That's why he's not high up here in the tier list, but he has pretty solid win rates, and he's actually quite a strong hero right now. We have Nightstalker, who's another one of those strong mid-game fighting heroes. He offers quite a bit of disable with his silence aura, and of course he's very, very fast in the night. And of course he gives you a vision advantage because he makes it night more often. He has this excellent night vision. So he's a great hero to play around if you want to fight in the mid game, if you want to make space for some sort of carry, or even if you just want to push. Just having that vision advantage is a huge deal in and of itself. As you can see, his win rate is not always that great. It depends sort of on the bracket. Sometimes it's very good, sometimes not that good. Which is why it's kind of at the bottom of the A tier here. But all these heroes in the S and A tier, they're excellent heroes that you can play. And what you really want to do as an offlaner is you want to have a small hero pool, because you're typically going to pick after the supports have picked in a pub. and this means you don't have that much information about the enemy team. You know probably what kind of support you're facing, but you don't really know what kind of core you're facing, and the enemy carry kind of also has to pick blindly, usually. So there's not really much point in having like a huge array of heroes that you can use to counterpick. Just like focus on like 2 or 3 heroes and really study those in depth. And my recommendation is just pick one out of this pool here, the S and A tier. Pick 2 of these heroes and just spam them, and that way you're going to succeed. But if you're already really proficient with one of the heroes here in the B list, that's also fine. You can keep playing those heroes, but these heroes you probably don't want to pick up right now. So first of all, on the B list, we have Nature's Prophet, who's a hero that's kind of polarizing. He's one of the hardest heroes to play, so that's just kind of depresses his win rate. I think if you are really good at Prophet, he's easily an A tier hero here. But it's also very hard to play, which is why it's only here at the top of B tier here. But especially with this new shard, he's just really powerful at pushing and split pushing. And then we have Timbersaw, who kind of fits quite well into the meta. There's a lot of these tanky strength kind of heroes being played right now, and Timbersaw does well against those. We have Abba, who's kind of a solid offlaner. He has decent win rates, nothing special, but he's not bad. Then we say for Leshrac and for Dragon Knight. Nothing in particular special about these heroes. They're just solid. If you want to play them, that's fine. Same for Mars. He's been nerfed a bit. He used to be one of the best offlaners. Nowadays he's more sort of middle of the pack, but he's still fine. If you like playing Mars, keep playing Mars. Viper as a hero is a lane dominator. So in particular lanes, he can just shut down the enemy carry. But his mid-game prowess is not quite as high, and he kind of tends to fall off a little bit. But it's still fine. The problem is he doesn't have any stuns, no initiation, which is a problem with an offlaner. So you want to pair him with some sort of pos 4 who can do that for him. You want to have something like an Earth Spirit or an Earth Shaker or a Clockwork. Those sort of hero that can get in there, has the disable, has the stun, has the initiation, and then you can follow up with your ranged abilities. Then we get to everyone's least favorite squirrel, that's Hoodwink. She's kind of okay. She has good amount of disable, she does some damage, she's fine. She's just overall kind of average at everything. So, you know, she's here in the B tier. Batrider is a great hero, but currently I think a bit stronger in the mid lane role, but he's still a fine offlaner. Death Prophet, we've seen her quite a bit actually in competitive play as an offlaner. I think it works a bit less well in pop play because DP kind of requires a bit of team coordination. She's more like a pushing hero, and it's kind of hard to coordinate with the team when you actually commit to a fight, so you can use the ultimate and so on. So she, I think, works a bit better in competitive play, but in pub she's still fine, which is why she's in B tier. Slack's favorite Wind Ranger is fine, but nothing special about her. Similar thing for Slada. He's like a strong laner, kind of, but he can also be abused if he's in an unfavorable matchup. And he's kind of like a one-dimensional hero. He's like this initiator. He's going to stun you. He's going to reduce your armor. And that's fine. He's great against particular heroes. Like if I'm playing Lone Druid, for example, I hate facing Slada. Not on a lane. If I'm playing safely in Lone Druid against Offlane Slada, you're going to do fine. But later on in the game, that ultimate on your bear is just really, really annoying. Similar thing for many other sort of frontline heroes. They really hate having that armor reduced. But Slada is kind of a bit of a one-dimensional hero, which is why it's only average here. Treant is kind of a bit of a weird offlaner, but he can work quite well in the right matchup. Sand King, he used to be a really strong hero in many past patches. These days he's kind of average. He's fine, but nothing particularly appealing about him. Void Spirit, I think, works a bit better as a mid laner, but I can still play him as an offlaner. Doom is a bit overnerfed, I think. He's still fine, but nothing special. Mirana works much better as a pos 4, but he's still fine as an offlaner. Bloodseeker nowadays a bit more of a carry, but he still can play as an offlaner. And we have Sancho, it's just kind of meh. He's sort of at the bottom of B tier. He's not bad, but you know, there's no game where you're excited to have a Sancho as your offlaner. Then we get to the C tier, which is the heroes that are not that great. You can still play them if you really like those heroes, but in general, I would not recommend you pick up any of those heroes. The Legion Commander can still be great in a game you really need a strong dispel, but on the whole, it's just a bit below par. Phoenix, I think, works better as a support these days. Venomancer is just kind of meh. He has no real disables, and if your enemy team just buys a pipe, they're gonna be fine. It's also, he can get really dominant in the lane if the enemy team has a strong safe lane. Bench, kind of an interesting case. You can kind of make it work as an offlaner if you go for the Aghanims, but the problem is that you just kind of need to get that 4,200 gold investment, like just to be like a decent offlaner. That's just stronger heroes to play in the offlane. Axe is just kind of overshadowed by other offlaners, especially the fact that you can no longer cut creep waves as easily as you could previously. Really hurts this hero. Brewmaster is actually a very strong hero right now, but in the support role, particularly in position 5. As an offlaner, he's kind of lackluster. His laning is not that strong. His ultimate is really good, but thing is, you also get the benefit of the ultimate if you're playing as a support. So if you want to play Brewmaster, I recommend just looking at how some of the pros are playing POS 5 Brewmaster, for example. Celery from Viking has played that quite a bit, and I think it's quite a strong playstyle, but as an offlaner, I think it's not that good right now. Bristleback, just kind of meh. If you're playing in lower ranked games, he's actually still great, but higher up, his winner is just a bit below par, so I would not recommend playing Bristleback unless you're in the lower tiers. Necro and Kunga are just kind of underwhelming heroes, nothing particularly special about them. We get a Silencer, who just really shouldn't be played as a core hero, but if you have to play him as a core hero, play him as a 3. It's not great, but it's okay. Pugna, Queen of Pain, sort of similar ideas. These heroes probably better as mid heroes, but they can still be played as an offlaner. Viva, kind of meh. I just don't think that hero is all that strong as an offlaner. If you want to run him, you should play him as a carry, I think. Omni Knight, again, more like a POS 5 hero these days. Not that great as an offlaner. And then Winter Wyvern is really situational offlaner. Then we get to the D tier. These heroes, you just shouldn't play them. Partridge is generally awful all around. Earthshaker, he's good as a 4, but as a 3, not that much. He's just a bad laner and doesn't offer much beyond what the POS 4 Earthshaker contributes. Enchantress, player as a 5. Ogre, play him as a 5. And Magnus is not that great in general, but if you really must play Magnus, play him in the mid lane. As an offlaner, he just doesn't offer enough. If after watching this tier list you think, man, I really want to learn how to play Beastmaster, I have the perfect video for you where I go through all the item builds, skill builds, how to play Beastmaster, what the general game plan is, how to micro him. That's the video for you. And if you want to see more content on micro heroes, zoo heroes especially, as well as more tier lists like this one, please subscribe to this channel and also follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Gunnarsson, where I stream Monday and Friday for DotA and on Sunday other games. And all is willing, I'll see you there.